I don't think you're ready for this, Natalie. The words landed like a slap. This is Revenge Room. If this is the first time you are seeing our video, kindly like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I was standing in the middle of the open floor. Our Tuesday all-hands meeting. 43 people present, the projector still showing the quarterly numbers I had spent 3 weeks pulling together. Marcus Webb, our CEO, was at the front of the room. He had just finished announcing that the senior accounts director position, the one I had been promised, was going to someone else. His name was Brandon Cole. Brandon had joined the company 8 months ago. I had been here for 5 years. I felt the air shift in the room, felt people look away from me, down at their laptops, at their shoes, anywhere but my face. Someone near the back coughed. A chair scraped the floor. The silence was the kind that feels loud. Marcus smiled the way powerful people smile when they want to look like they're being kind. Measured. Deliberate. We just feel the timing isn't right, he added. I nodded once. My hands were completely still. But inside, something cracked open. Not sadness, not embarrassment. Something harder. Something that had been building quietly for a long time. I looked at Marcus. Then I walked back to my desk. Nobody spoke to me for the rest of that morning. The Slack messages that usually pinged every few minutes went silent. My inbox, which had been full that same morning, looked suddenly empty. When I walked to the kitchen to get water, 2 colleagues who had been laughing together went quiet the moment they saw me coming. That was the part that stung the most. Not the public humiliation. Not even Marcus's tone. That polished, rehearsed delivery that made cruelty sound like concern. What hurt was how quickly I became invisible. Like the moment he took that promotion off the table, I stopped being a person worth acknowledging. I sat back at my desk and opened the client dashboard we used to track account activity. I moved slowly, deliberately. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I pulled up my task list and kept working, because that is what I always did. By lunch, I had processed enough to realize something important. This had not been spontaneous. Marcus had not simply changed his mind that morning, standing in front of 43 people. That was not something you did by accident. That kind of decision, delivered publicly with that level of calm, was planned, which meant someone had made a choice. And I needed to understand why. 3 months earlier, my director, Paul Nkosi, had called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. She was warm and direct, the kind of manager who didn't waste your time with pleasantries when she had something real to say. She closed the door and sat across from me with her hands folded on the desk. "Natalie," she said, "I want you to hear this from me before it becomes official. You're next in line for Senior Accounts Director. Marcus has signed off. It's yours." I remembered the feeling in my chest that day. Not excitement exactly, more like relief, the kind that comes after years of doing the work quietly, without complaint, and finally having someone see it. I thanked her. I went home and cooked a good meal. After that conversation, I poured everything I had into the next 3 months. I came in early. I stayed late. I took on the Callaway Corp restructuring when nobody else wanted the headache. I rebuilt the Harman Industries relationship after a billing dispute nearly killed the contract. I trained 2 junior staff members from scratch. I did everything right. And then, on a Tuesday morning in front of the entire office, Marcus Webb gave the role to Brandon Cole. I kept thinking about Paula's words. "You're next in line." What had changed? Brandon came to find me that same afternoon. He had the look of a man who knew he had walked into something uncomfortable and was trying to appear unaware of it. He leaned against the partition beside my desk. Jacket slightly too crisp, smile slightly too casual. "Hey," he said. "I just wanted to, make sure things are good between us." I looked up from my screen. "Things are fine," I said. He exhaled like I had just done him a favor. Then he pulled out his phone and started talking about the transition, the handover documents, the client briefing files. He needed access to the full account histories, the internal notes, the relationship maps I had built over years. He wanted to set up a call the following week to go through everything. He said the word transition 4 times in 5 minutes. I listened to every word. I thought about the Callaway Corp folder sitting on my drive, the Harman Industries relationship map I had built from scratch, the Westfield consolidated account, my longest, most complex relationship, 14 months of trust building, quiet problem solving, and careful communication. I thought about all of it. Then I smiled and told Brandon I would send over what I could. That night, I barely slept. The biggest account I managed was Westfield Consolidated. They were not just a client. They were the kind of account that kept an entire division running. Their annual contract alone was worth more than the next 3 clients combined. I had won them at a pitch meeting 2 years earlier, when 2 senior managers had already failed to land the deal. I had gone back to basics, sat with their operations team, listened, and built a proposal around what they actually needed. Their primary contact was a man named Victor Osei, vice president of procurement, precise in his communication, slow to trust, loyal once he did. It had taken me 4 months to earn that loyalty. I knew when to push and when to give space. I knew which concerns Victor raised early were test questions and which were real worries. I knew that he always read the appendix of every document before the executive summary, and that he valued brevity over detail in meetings. Brandon did not know any of that. I thought about whether to tell him. I pulled up the account file and sat there for a while. In the end, I sent him the basic history, contract dates, billing structure, meeting logs, the things that lived in the system. The things that actually mattered were not in any system. The first week after the promotion announcement, things shifted in ways that were small but unmistakable. Emails that had always come to me directly started going to Brandon with my name copied at the bottom, or not copied at all. Meeting invites for accounts I had managed for years disappeared from my calendar. I would check a thread and find that a conversation had continued without me. Decisions made, next steps agreed, my name nowhere in sight. Then one message arrived by accident. I was not supposed to see it. It was an internal note from Marcus to Paula, forwarded to the wrong address in a thread I was still part of. It was 3 lines. Going forward, let's keep Natalie client-facing only. She's useful there. Just limit her involvement in any internal strategy conversations. We don't need her in those rooms. Client-facing only. Useful there. I read it once, twice, a 3rd time. Then I saved a screenshot, sent a copy to my personal email, and closed the thread. I did not reply. I did not forward it. I did not mention it to anyone in the office. I just saved it, and I thought about what it meant to be called useful in the same sentence as being deliberately kept small. Our office manager, a quiet woman named Toby Adecunnell, found me in the stairwell on a Wednesday evening. Toby was not someone who got involved in politics. She showed up, did her work, went home. We had a good relationship, built mostly on shared coffee and occasional complaints about the broken 3rd-floor printer. She was not the kind of person who came to find you in stairwells, which was how I knew it was serious. She looked over her shoulder once, then leaned in close. They've been saying you're too attached to certain clients, she said, that you've made yourself too central, that it's a risk to the business. I stared at her. Attached, I repeated. She gave me a look that said she agreed with how absurd it was, but didn't have the power to change it. I just thought you should know how they're framing it, she said, because whatever you're planning, you should know what story they're already telling about you. She left before I could respond properly. I stood in that stairwell for a few minutes. Too attached. That was what they called 5 years of building something that actually worked. That was what they called deep client knowledge that kept accounts from walking out the door. A liability. I thought about that word for a long time. Brandon led his first major client interaction with Westfield Consolidated 11 days after the announcement. I was not in the meeting. I heard about it in fragments, the way you always hear things in an open office, through the gaps between conversations, the tones people use when they think nobody is paying attention. From what I gathered, the call had not gone well. Victor Osei had asked specific questions about the Phase 2 delivery timeline, questions that required context from a conversation I had with his team 6 weeks earlier, a conversation that had never made it into the official notes because at the time I had been the only person who needed to know. Brandon did not have that context. He gave a general answer. Victor, who did not like general answers, had pushed back. Brandon had moved on without addressing the concern properly. By the end of the call, nothing had been agreed. That evening, I opened the Westfield account file and looked at the Phase 2 notes. I thought about calling Victor myself. Just a quick message, a soft check-in, the kind of thing I would have done automatically before all of this. But my name was not officially on the account anymore. I was support. I closed the file, and I waited. The email came at 7:43 the next morning. Subject line: Urgent, Westfield, Consolidated. Sender, Victor Osei. It was addressed to the company's general accounts inbox, but Victor had put my name in the body of the message, not Brandon's, not Marcus's, mine. I would like Natalie Carter to handle all communications regarding Westfield Consolidated going forward, effective immediately. Yesterday's call raised concerns about the continuity of our account relationship. I have significant reservations about the current structure and would appreciate a direct response from Natalie by end of day. I read it sitting at my desk with my coffee still untouched and going cold. I read it again. Then I looked across the office at Brandon's desk. He was already in. He had his headphones on. He had not seen the email yet. Then I looked at Marcus's office. The glass door was closed. His assistant, a young man named Kwame, was already fielding calls. I thought about what was about to happen when Marcus saw that message. I straightened in my chair. I did not reply yet. I waited, calmly, for the day to begin in earnest. The office changed within an hour. Marcus read Victor's email at some point before 9, and whatever his reaction was in private, the ripples spread fast. By 8:30, there were 2 unscheduled meetings on the shared calendar, both marked internal, both with no agenda listed, both in the small boardroom with the frosted glass. I was not invited to either of them, but I could see who was. Paula, Brandon, the head of client services, a man named Dominic O'Ware, who rarely came into the office before 10. I watched them file in, watched the door close. Around me, the floor was quieter than usual. People were at their desks, but not quite working. The kind of stillness that happens when everyone knows something's happening, but nobody knows exactly what. A few people glanced toward the boardroom, then toward me, then quickly away. I kept my expression neutral. I opened a document I had been building over the past 2 weeks, a quiet, careful record of every email, every instruction, every change to my calendar, every meeting I had been removed from, dates and times, names, exact wording. Not revenge. Clarity, I kept telling myself. I just wanted to be absolutely clear about what had happened and when. Brandon came to my desk just before noon. He looked different from the easy, polished version of himself that had leaned against my partition 10 days ago. His jacket was off. His tie was loosened. There was a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He pulled up a chair without asking and sat beside me. "They want you on a call with Westfield this afternoon," he said. His voice was flat, controlled. "Okay," said. He looked at me for a moment. I could see him working out how to frame whatever he wanted to say next. "I just need you to know," he said quietly, "that I'm still leading the account. Today is just about settling the client down, getting things back on track." I looked at him. "Of course," I said. He nodded, stood up, and left without another word. I watched him walk back toward the boardroom. Then I turned back to my screen and pulled up the Westfield account file. Not the basic history I had sent Brandon. The full version, my private working copy, every note, every conversation, every small detail that had never made it into the official system. I read through it carefully, the way you do before something important. I was ready. The call was at 3 in the afternoon. Brandon led the introduction. He gave a brief overview of the account structure, mentioned the team, said all the right words. His voice was professional, smooth, practiced. He was good at starting things. Then Victor Osei spoke. "Natalie," he said, ignoring everything Brandon had just said, "I want to hear from you, directly. What is the current status of the Phase 2 delivery?" The room, Brandon, Dominic, 2 other managers sitting in, went very still. I answered clearly, calmly, from memory. I walked Victor through the timeline we had agreed, the outstanding decision point his team needed to resolve, the 2 potential delays I had flagged 6 weeks ago, and the way we had built contingency time into the schedule to absorb them. Victor's tone changed as I spoke. The tightness that had been in his voice at the start softened. "That's what I needed to hear," he said. "That's exactly what I was looking for yesterday." He did not address Brandon again for the rest of the call. When it ended, the line went quiet. Dominic looked at Marcus, who had joined the room silently halfway through. Nobody said anything, but they had all heard it. Victor kept me on the line after the others dropped off. "What's going on over there?" he asked. His voice was careful, not aggressive, the tone of someone who had noticed something and was giving me the chance to be honest without making it harder than it needed to be. I paused before I answered. "We've had some internal restructuring," I said. "There are new processes being put in place. But I want you to know that I'm still here and that your account is still being looked after." There was a silence on his end. "I have been working with account managers for 22 years, Victor said slowly. "I can tell the difference between someone managing a relationship and someone managing a handover." I said nothing. "I'd like you to send me a written confirmation of the Phase 2 timeline by Friday," he said, "with your name on it." "I'll have it to you by Thursday morning," I said. Another short silence. "Good," he said. Then he thanked me and ended the call. I sat alone at my desk with the phone still in my hand, with my name on it. That was the part that mattered. Marcus called me into his office the following morning. His tone was different, the kind of different that comes when someone has decided that a warmer approach might be more useful than the previous one. He gestured to the chair across from his desk and poured 2 glasses of water without being asked, which he had never done before. "Natalie," he said, settling back, "I want to have an honest conversation." I waited. "We may have moved too quickly with the structural changes," he said. "I think there's an opportunity to revisit your growth path within the company. There's a senior strategic advisor role we've been considering. It's not fully defined yet, but I think it could be a strong fit." I listened carefully. He talked about my strengths. He used the word invaluable twice. He talked about client trust, long-term relationships, and institutional knowledge. He did not say promotion. He did not say senior accounts director. He said growth path. I nodded at the right moments and asked 2 careful questions about timeline and reporting structure. I let him feel like the conversation had gone well. Then I thanked him, stood up, and went back to my desk. Growth path. I had heard exactly what he was actually offering, and what he was not. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before driving home. I thought about Marcus's offer, the careful language, the warm delivery, the strategic advisor title that meant nothing. No defined scope, no authority, no seat at the table where decisions were made. A way to keep me producing results while ensuring I never had real power over anything. I thought about the email I had saved. Client-facing only. Useful there. I thought about Toby's warning. Too attached. I thought about Brandon still officially leading Westfield Consolidated, his name on the account while I was quietly doing the work from behind a title that hadn't even been properly written yet. And I thought about what it would mean to accept that arrangement. If I accepted, I would be comfortable, safe, still employed, still useful, and absolutely nothing would change. Not for me. Not for the next person they did this to. I had spent 5 years being excellent in ways that were easy to extract and impossible to acknowledge. I had been the invisible backbone of a structure that rewarded the people on top of it. I was done accepting crumbs from a table I had helped build. I started the car. I had decisions to make, and I needed a clear head to make them properly. 2 days later, Toby found me again. This time she didn't pull me aside. She sent a message directly to my personal number outside work hours. 3 sentences. I have access to notes from the last 2 leadership strategy sessions. You need to see something. Can we meet for coffee before work? We met at a place 3 blocks from the office at 7 in the morning. She slid her phone across the table without speaking. I read the notes she had photographed. Unofficial summaries from internal sessions that were never circulated widely. There it was in plain language from a leadership meeting 6 weeks ago, before the promotion announcement. Keep Natalie Carter in client-facing role. High retention risk. Clients trust her specifically. Limit internal strategic involvement. She becomes too difficult to manage if she understands the full commercial structure. Too difficult to manage. That was the real concern. Not my readiness. Not my experience. Not my skills. I was difficult to manage because I understood too much and they couldn't control what I would do with that understanding. They hadn't denied me the promotion because I wasn't ready. They had denied it because I was. I handed the phone back to Toby and drank my coffee. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded and looked out the window. I went back through the past 3 years carefully. I looked at promotion decisions, project assignments, who got credit for which wins, and how responsibility was allocated when things went wrong. I was not looking for something dramatic. I was looking for a pattern. It was there. 3 strong performers before me, all women. 2 of them senior, one who had left the company, had followed similar paths. Strong results, increasing responsibility, promises from management. Then, quietly, the opportunities had shifted sideways. New hires brought in above them, their work absorbed into someone else's portfolio, their names absent from the presentations that showcased the results they had produced. One of them I still had contact with. Her name was Adiz, and she now ran her own consultancy. I had always assumed she had left by choice. I called her that evening. She picked up on the second ring, and when I explained what was happening, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I waited 2 years hoping it would change. It didn't. The system wasn't broken, Natalie. It was working exactly as they designed it to. I already knew that, but hearing it said out loud made something settle clearly in my mind. This was not about one promotion. It was about a pattern, and patterns could be exposed. The Westfield consolidated contract was up for renewal. I found that out by accident. The renewal date had been removed from my calendar when the account was reassigned, but an automated system reminder still came through to my old project folder. The contract was due to be renewed in 6 weeks. The value of the renewal, including the extended scope Victor had been signaling interest in for the past quarter, was somewhere between 4 and 6 million pounds over 3 years. This was not a small number. This was a number that would show up in the annual report, a number that would be mentioned in investor briefings, a number that Marcus would want to have his name attached to. And the person Victor Osei had explicitly asked to handle all Westfield communications was me. Brandon was officially leading the account. His name was on the contract. But Victor had gone around him once already and asked for me directly. If the renewal call came and Victor found someone else leading it, there was a real chance, a significant chance, that Westfield would pause, ask questions, reconsider. I sat with that knowledge for 2 days. I did not do anything with it yet. I just understood it fully and let it settle. By week 3, I had a clear picture of the trap. It was elegant in a cold sort of way. They had removed my title, but kept my usefulness. Brandon's name was on the account, so any success would be credited to him, or to the team, which in boardroom language meant Marcus. But if anything went wrong and the client threatened to leave, I would be brought in quietly to fix it. No credit going in. All blame available on the way out. I was the safety net underneath the trapeze act they were performing with someone else. The Westfield renewal was coming. If Brandon led it well, Marcus would use it as proof the restructure had worked. My contribution, invisible. If it went badly and they pulled me in at the last minute, I would have saved it, with no record of having been excluded. just another quiet rescue folded into the team's general success. So I stopped being a quiet safety net. I started building a clear, documented record of what was actually happening. Every email, every instruction, every decision I had been removed from, every moment my expertise was used without my name attached. Dates and times, names, exact wording. When the time came, I would have everything I needed. And the time was coming soon. 6 days before the Westfield renewal presentation, I made my move. I sent Victor Osei a brief, professional message. Not a complaint, not a warning, just a clear, direct note confirming the Phase 2 documentation he had asked for, along with a forward-looking summary of the strategic priorities I knew his team had been considering for the renewal period. I included 3 specific recommendations based on conversations I had had with his operations team over the past year, things that were not in any formal document, things that existed only in my working knowledge of how Westfield actually functioned. Victor replied within the hour, "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need going into the renewal. Can you lead the presentation next week?" I forwarded his message to Marcus, Dominic, and Paula with a simple note. Victor Osei has requested that I lead the Westfield renewal presentation, scheduled for Thursday. Please let me know if there are any concerns before I confirm. I pressed send and sat back. The reply from Marcus came 12 minutes later. "Let's discuss." I smiled and typed back, happy to. "I'm free at 2. The renewal presentation was scheduled for Thursday at 10. By Tuesday evening, the internal dynamic had shifted in ways I could feel even when no one was speaking directly to me. Brandon was quieter. The boardroom meetings, the ones I was never invited to, had increased to twice daily. Dominic walked past my desk 3 times on Tuesday morning without making eye contact. On Wednesday afternoon, Marcus asked me to share my presentation in advance for review. I sent him the deck at 4. At 5:15, he sent back a version with suggested changes, mostly additions in the executive summary that subtly shifted the framing. Small adjustments that moved credit toward the team and away from specific relationships. Language that made the strategy sound like it had emerged from company thinking rather than individual expertise. I read through every suggested change carefully. Then I prepared my response. I was listed as support, but Thursday's meeting would show exactly what support had actually built. And I was going to make sure the right people saw it clearly without ambiguity. The presentation I gave on Thursday would not be the version Marcus had edited. I arrived at the Westfield offices at 9:45. Victor met me in the lobby himself, which was unusual. He shook my hand firmly and walked me up to the boardroom with the kind of ease that came from genuine comfort, not professional courtesy. "I'm glad you're leading this," he said simply as the lift doors opened. Inside the boardroom were 6 people from Westfield's side, including their CFO and head of operations. From our company, Marcus, Dominic, Brandon, and 2 others. Marcus was already seated. His expression was carefully neutral. I set up my materials without hurrying and opened the presentation. For the next 40 minutes, I walked the room through the full renewal proposal. Not just the numbers, the context, the history, the strategic rationale built on 2 years of relationship and a deep understanding of how Westfield operated. I referenced specific conversations, specific decisions, specific moments where small choices had built the trust that made this relationship worth what it was now worth. Victor and his team leaned forward as I spoke. Marcus leaned back. Brandon stared at the table. When I reached the slide with the extended scope proposal, the £4 to £6 million opportunity, I watched the CFO make a note on her pad and nod to Victor. That nod told me everything. The Q&A started calmly. Victor's team asked technical questions first: timeline, delivery milestones, risk mitigation. I answered each one directly without hesitation, pulling from 2 years of working knowledge that no briefing document could have given Brandon. Then Westfield's CFO, a sharp woman named Priya, looked across the table at the whole room and said, "I have one broader question. The original account structure we agreed to was built around continuity of relationship. We've noticed some changes on your side over the past month. Can someone explain the current management structure for this account? The room went quiet. Marcus shifted in his chair. Brandon looked at his laptop. I said nothing. I waited. Victor looked directly at Marcus. To be specific, Victor said, quietly but clearly, why wasn't Natalie leading this account for the past 4 weeks? The silence that followed was the kind that has weight to it. Marcus cleared his throat and began to speak about team structures and strategic development and growth planning. The words came out smooth and practiced, but nobody in that room looked convinced. Victor looked at me once, briefly. I held his gaze steadily and said nothing. I didn't need to. The truth had just been spoken out loud by the client in front of everyone. The meeting ended at noon. Victor walked me out himself again, ahead of the rest of the group. In the lobby, while the others were gathering coats and exchanging polite goodbyes behind us, he spoke quietly. I want you to know that we are absolutely signing the renewal, he said, and I want the extended scope included. But I want it written into the contract structure that you are the named primary contact on this account. I looked at him. I'll make sure that's reflected, I said. He nodded once, the way someone nods when they have said what they came to say, and trust that it will be handled. As I walked back to the car with Marcus and the others, the atmosphere was different. Brandon was on his phone. Dominic was making notes. Marcus walked beside me for a few steps and said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "That went well." "Yes," I said. "It did." We drove back in 2 cars. I sat in the back of the second one and looked out the window at the city going past and thought about everything I had documented over the past 4 weeks and everything that was about to change and what I was going to do with it. I had not fought loudly. I had just made sure the right people saw the truth, exactly at the right moment. 3 weeks after the Westfield presentation, I sat in Marcus's office for the second time. This meeting was different. Paula was there. Dominic was there. There was a formal document on the desk, not a vague discussion about growth paths, but an actual offer letter. Senior Accounts Director. The role I had been promised 7 months ago. The title, the salary, the authority. Brandon had been reassigned to a different division. Quietly, no announcement, Marcus slid the letter across the desk. "I think we've all had a chance to reflect," he said carefully. I picked it up and read through every line without rushing. I had learned that the value of a document is always in the details. The terms were good, specific, no ambiguity about scope or authority. I signed it, but before I left, I placed a second document on the desk. Not a threat, just a factual summary, the record I had been building for 4 weeks. The emails, the meeting exclusions, the edited presentation, the internal notes Toby had shown me. "I'm not submitting this anywhere," I said. "I just want it understood that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, to me or to anyone else here." Marcus looked at the document. He nodded. I walked out with a title I had earned twice. I didn't fight loud. I just made sure the truth had nowhere left to hide.